You know, anymore when I'm looking for realtor comps or for repair values, I'll just go to realtor.com and look at active listings. And you can see on there which homes are actively listed. And if this guy wants $220 for his house, let's say, but I can see a bunch of active listings for $200 that are similar to his, that are in good shape, well, I know he wants more than what he's probably going to get for it. Okay. So that kind of just gives me a ballpark. I'll say, look, we can do 1 to 2 years probably, but you might need to do 3 or 4. Are you okay with that?
Because of that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. He did say it's in great shape, though, and he did say that lease options, he'd consider it. So, you get good and bad.
I have a feeling he's going to probably be not like the idea of us keeping the option deposit for our fee, because he knows real estate business, and
mortgage broker.
He's a mortgage broker.
Yeah.
So we'll see. And on this kind of a scenario, what does he want for it?
She said he wanted between
230
and
and 240.
And like I said, I didn't really have an opinion of value, but on the assessor's site it said assessed, 221 in land, 42. So no, but you can't tell if it's up or down. But it seems like it's in the same ballpark, though.
Yeah. So I'm just going to ask him and tell him what we can do, and
Yeah,
maybe.
you can even tell him. I think we said we're answering your response on Craigslist and everything. So.
Okay.
But and I haven't spoken to him, so I won't say anything. Thank you.
Where your business partner, Louise?
Yeah.
Is she here in Colorado Springs?
She's up in. No, we're actually up north.
Oh, you're in Denver?
Yeah, Denver.
I'm losing bars. I only have 1 bar. Well, we'll see if this goes through. Oh, there we go. I got some more bars. Okay, remember, everybody be quiet. Nobody laugh.
Hello, this is Dave Armstrong with US Bank.
So we can call him later.
You can keep that at home.
Okay. But the good thing about this lead is it's a guy who responded positively to our ad. He's already open to a lease purchase, which is good. So the obstacle to overcome probably is going to be how we get paid. He probably doesn't have a problem with us getting paid something, but he might only want to pay us 1 month's rent. And for me, it's just not worth it. What I would then do is, well, how about you hire me as a consultant, and I'll show you how to do lease purchasing just like we do it, and you can get all of our contracts. And then you just spend a half hour with him on the phone, send him everything he needs, and then be available to answer questions when he wants them.
Another option, why didn't we offer the wholesale deal to the guy in Iowa?
That first guy?
Could you?
That price range is too high. Investors are probably not.
I was just curious.
And he wants real close to what he's asking for, so there's no room, really.
Oh, okay. So the wholesale deal you would offer with some equity in it?
Yeah.
Or just a rehab?
The question was, when would I do a traditional wholesaling deal? Usually, I only like to do traditional wholesale deals and then remember that heat map in the kind of median and below, right? So if it's in one of those median and below areas, I know that the investors would want to buy homes there. And I'd need to be in at 60, 70 cents on the dollar, and then still have room for me to flip it and make 10 grand on it to a cash buyer investor. So I want to make sure when I'm selling that house, that it's the cheapest house on the market, and it's really close to what similar homes have sold for. So I want to make sure there's no other house that an investor would want that would be cheaper than mine. Yes?
There's this, I live in Castle Rock, and there's this house in my neighborhood I run every other week. And for 2 weeks, it was, they had a realtor. And then for about a month, for sale by owner. And then another couple of weeks, they had a realtor, and then it keeps going back and forth. So I was thinking it's one of those places I want to send a postcard to or a yellow letter. What option should I do? Should I just say we're investors interested in buying, or should I, tell
So the
them-
question is, you have a house in your neighborhood that's been flip-flopping between FSBO and realtor, and how best to reach them, right? Well, that kind of a house, I would do a reverse lookup
Okay.
and see if you can get a phone number of the owner. Just go to whitepages.com and do a reverse lookup, and just call them.
Okay.
Or you might even be able to look up on the MLS or realtor.com. Well,
the
that's not going to give you the
tax
home.
assessor, I can get that too.
Yeah, but it won't give you the phone number.
Zaba search is another good one.
Zaba search. Zaba search.
ZABA.
If you can't get their name and phone number, or if you can't get a hold of them, you could send them a yellow letter. I would just go ahead and get your yellow pad and write it yourself.
Okay.
Send it to them. You know what? Actually, they've done studies. If you take a yellow pad of paper, write your note on there, crumple it up, open it back up, and then fold it, you get a much higher response rate.
Okay.
Yeah, or you could knock on the door. Exactly.
I thought about that since I go by there, and I think they see me every morning. So.
Here's another really cool strategy that I didn't even talk about yet. If you find a good several zip codes that you want to be a big fish in a small pond, you want to be the king of the mountain in those zip codes, Post-it notes are great. Post-it notes are, you can get them printed where they look like the UPS guy was here and he left a note, sorry we missed you or something. And you can get these things printed for like 3.5 cents per Post-it note. And then you can get them delivered. I found guys in St. Louis that will deliver them for 8 cents a Post-it note. So they'll go through and blanket a neighborhood with Post-it notes, and it's only 11 cents a Post-it note. And the response rate is about the same as what it would be with postcards. The only difference is you're just canvassing, you're blanketing one neighborhood. All right, so if it's a really good neighborhood, this is what I would recommend doing. Let's say you find a buyer who wants to do a lease purchase, but you don't have any inventory, but they have a good down payment. Well, you can tell them, or ask them, what areas would you be interested in? Okay. Then what you can do is, they say, well, I want, and you've already pre-qualified them, and you know they're good candidates for a lease option. Okay. If you find which areas they're wanting, you can just blast that area with Post-it notes. Get these so Google Richard Roop Post-it notes. Who knows who Richard Roop is? He lives near this area, doesn't he? He's a good guy. I'm not a big fan of, well, never mind. There's some strategies that he teaches where I think it's a little too risky as far when it comes to debt, taking on too much debt. That's just my opinion. But Richard Roop's a great guy, and he's the king of marketing, in my opinion. He's masterful at
So you said Google Richard Roop.
Post-its. Yeah. So Google Richard Roop, R-O-O-P, Post-it notes. There's a company that prints his Post-it notes. Okay? They're copyrighted. So he only gives certain permission to certain printers to print his stuff. But his stuff is good. Where does he live, by the way? Doesn't he? Is that far from here? Or? I'd love to meet him someday. Can you? I'd like to meet him. Great guy. You know, he invests and does a lot of deals. But I love he's really good at coming up with good postcards and letters and marketing. And he came up with this Post-it note idea, and it works really, really well. Well, you can buy these Post-it notes from this company. It's at thediscountprinter.com, thediscountprinter.com. But they won't even show you what the Post-it note looks like unless you call them, and I think you have to buy something. But they work great to blanket a neighborhood that you want to focus on, and you're going to get a lot of calls from those, and they're about half the cost of postcards. They're really, really effective. So Post-it notes. Let's take a quick break. How's that? I got to go to the rest. Sorry. Is 5 minutes, depending on kind of where we're going, what we're doing with this. Before I move on, though, I want to just ask, is there anything anybody wants me to cover that's really, really important to you before we end today? Anything that you can think of that you really want me to cover, I want to make sure I don't forget it, that you want me to cover before the end of the day.
You told us to remind you about the
Promissory notes. Okay. I can talk about that in just a couple minutes.
And an investor's responsibility about getting a decent deal on a house. You can't just like, well, I'll just pay you whatever you want. Some more consideration in that area.
Some more consideration on, I just can't,
How to look at what the owner wants
price.
and then make it a fair deal for your buyer.
Make it a fair deal for the buyer.
Yeah,
Okay.
That's kind of how you think about it.
Okay.
Can you touch on who gets tax deductions?
Who gets the tax deductions? I can't remember all of these. Let's just go through it right now. Let's just go through this right now. Promissory notes. I love creating notes. You'll hear people teach you how to find notes and negotiate them and broker notes and get discounts on notes. That's great. You can make a lot of money on that. Let me tell you though, it's a lot easier to create notes. It's a lot easier to create notes, and if you open your eyes and your mind to this new, it's not a new concept, but for me it's new, of creating notes. You can create notes on anything. So I talked about offering your services as a consultant to sellers. You know, you could tell them, look, my fee is 1 month's rent. You normally get that up front, but if they don't have that up front, maybe you can get half now and the rest spread over the next 6 to 12 months. Okay? Or you could have them pay you the rest if and when they get a tenant buyer. But I would set it up where you get at least half now, and give them a note to collect $50 a month for the next 6 months or whatever. Okay? You can collect notes from buyers. If you're trying to get $5,000 option deposit and you get somebody that only has 3, but they still make good money, they're a good tenant buyer, go ahead and collect the 3 now and get the rest, the other $2,000, spread out over 1 or 2 months. Okay? Create a promissory note. You can get a promissory note from, what else? I was talking about this before and I found 4 different things. Oh, let's say you have a house under tradition that you're trying to do a traditional lease option, a traditional wholesale deal for, and you want to market this, you want to sell this contract for $10,000 to Joe Blow investor. Maybe they don't have $10,000 for the assignment fee on that option, but maybe you can take 5 now and get the rest with payments over time. If I would have been doing these kinds of creative notes 4 years ago when I was first doing this, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt I'd be sitting on $10,000 to $20,000 a month just in passive income from these notes. They're just little chunks here and there, but they add up. And you'll find, and I've not been doing this long enough to tell you from my own experience, but I've talked to other people who have, 10 to 20% of these notes will default. They won't go through with it, right? But, okay, what did you have into it? What did you put into it? What are you really losing? Nothing. So there's ways you can set up these notes where you get the same amount of income that you get from rental properties, passive income, without all of the management headaches of owning rental property. So you can create notes on anything. You just got to be creative and think about it. And so the number one area you'll probably want to use it is with tenant buyers. But make sure they can afford that extra $100 or $200 a month. Okay? And you got to remind them that if you really want to buy this house, you have to fulfill this promissory note. Now, do I record that note or record a lien against the property for that note? No, I don't do that. It's just not worth the hassle. So just start thinking about promissory notes. And if you need to create a note to make a deal more attractive or something like that, then do it. The other question was, would I talk a little bit more about, because I've said to the seller, I said to you guys, I don't care what price you want, I'll get it for you. The thing is, it's a matter of time then. If this seller, if I were to look into it, the one that we talked to, Dwayne, if he wanted $450 for his house, but I thought it was worth $350 by looking at Zillow or comps or whatever, I would just say, look, I see all these other active homes right now that are listed. Here's some recently sold. I could get you the $450, but it's probably going to be 5 to 10 years. So then I just set it up as a longer lease option. Or they may say, no, I have to be 2 years. I'll say, oh, how about this then? We'll set the option price at this high number, but we'll do a 2-year option, but let's just add language that the tenant buyer can extend it every 12 months as long as they need to do it to get it appraised. Mm-hmm. And so if it doesn't get appraised, the tenant buyer doesn't have to pay any penalty. They just get another extension, an automatic extension every 12 months until it can get appraised. Maybe every 6 months.
Yeah, but your benchmark is still appraised value.
You've,
Even though they can't get it today, or he wants more than appraisal today.
but you can't use, I don't use that language appraised value in the contract because that's whose appraisal? The buyer's appraisal or the seller's appraisal? Well, you could say, well, take the average of the two. Well, then you could say, well, let's take 3 appraisals and throw out the low and high and just do the medium, or take the average of the 3. It's just, you can't do that. It opens up a can of worms. The seller, you have to have a firm option price. The seller can lower their price if they want, but they don't have to. But they can give the tenant buyer more time. So that's the way I set it up. That's why I say it doesn't matter what you want for the house. There was another question. Yes?
You spent a lot of time on the seller part of the program. What about the buyer side as far as how do you go about finding that right buyer?
Maybe you missed it. We talked about Craigslist, and I talked about Postlets, V-Flyer, putting an ad on Craigslist every 3 to 4 days, 2 to 3 days, and bandit signs. It's real simple. And Michael was talking about rentalhouses.com or rentals.com. Pretty much all over the country, that's the nation's largest. Just go into Google and type in lease option homes or rental homes, Colorado Springs, and see which websites come up there at the top, and see if you can add your house to those websites. You may have to pay a little bit for it, but Craigslist is the best place to go. And bandit signs are, if you can do bandit signs on the weekend. And remember we talked about too, make sure it's a nice home in a nice neighborhood. Because if it's a good home in a good area, if you don't find a good tenant buyer in 2 to 4 weeks, then something's wrong. It's overpriced, it needs too much work, etc.
But the buyers are going to be in that neighborhood anyway. They're going to be.
Yeah, the buyers are going to be driving around on weekends looking for homes in that area. They're going to see your sign. Make sure there's a sign in the yard. If you can get away with it, I've known investors that will put 10 to 20 signs on the weekend in the yard of the house. It works. They'll put 10 to 20 signs in the yard of the house on the weekends. Just the weekend. Yeah, it works. I talked to a guy who does that on every house he gets under contract, and he's tested it on, like, one weekend he'll just put 1 sign, and the next weekend he'll put 10 signs in the yard. And I forget the number he told me, but the increase in calls is significant. People driving by, they see this yard with a bunch of signs, they're like, wow, let's go check that out.
It's got a fence, you can put a banner on.
They're motivated sellers. So my signs are real simple. They look like they're handwritten signs. Even the big yard sign that I put in, now some people would argue with me, but my signs are, I have 2 different signs. One that's kind of big and handwritten, and another one that's more printed and looks nice. It depends. Sometimes the owners don't feel comfortable with you putting a bandit sign in their front yard,
Rent credits.
Yes, rent credits.
If, when you're putting the rent credits, it's gonna cover for your first term, right? Basically, you don't wanna be dipping into, past what they owe.
Right, well, the rent credits, I find out what the seller wants for the home, and I add on to that my option deposit that I keep, and I add on to that the rent credits. Typically what I do for rent credits is I'll just do 15 to 20% for 24 months. So if they want $1,000 a month in rent, that's $150 a month times 24 months. I don't know what that is. So I'll just add that on to the price of the home. And I remind the seller, you don't have to. That's not money you have to set aside every month. It's just a credit on the HUD. It's a credit on paper at the end.
No, okay, and then my question is, if they do have to go to the extension, does that just stop, or?
Yeah, my contract spells on there, these rent credits are only good for 12 months, or they're only good for 24 months. Now, you don't lose them if you need to extend it, but you don't get any new ones.
Okay.
I also put on there, for the tenant buyer, if you buy the house early, you get all the rent credits to give them some incentive to try to buy that house early. It's just covering their closing costs. It doesn't go towards their down payment, but it's an incentive for them to pay their rent on time, because every month they're late, they're throwing away $200. Any other questions?
Quick one here. So seller is relocated, so the house is going to be vacant, and you're like, he wants to sell it, obviously. Why don't you want to do a lease option? Because I have that debt to my name, I have that mortgage payment to my name. How long does it take, if they do get a lease option tenant in there, before they can say, okay, this gets credited to my income too? Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
that's.
So, like, if they're going to try to qualify for another loan, and they're like, well,
You know, it's surprising though. I found a lot of sellers who are already pre-qualified for another loan if they rent their house out.
Really?
Yeah, there's a lot of sellers out there that have good credit. Surprise, surprise. There's a lot of sellers out there who still have great credit. They have good income, but they don't want to. They need to talk to a mortgage lender in advance, right? They need to find out, well, if I'm renting this out, the lender's only going to look at 75% of that rent towards their income. And then they're going to look at the rest of their debt. They're going to look at how much they're putting down on the new house. All these different things play a role. And so they'll find out, they'll say, yeah, you know, you need to rent that house as soon as possible if you want to buy this other house, you know? And I've even heard mortgage brokers say it would be better if you had a lease option. That looks more favorably to us than a regular rental would. So anything else you want me to cover before we end? Because I want to have a few more things to talk about. Yes?
Tax deduction.
Yeah, tax deductions, you got to talk to a tax accountant. I hate taxes, and I just don't like talking about them. My goal is to pay $1 million in taxes a year.
I'm sorry?
My goal is to pay $1 million in taxes a year.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
So, yes?
Why do you prefer lease purchase option as opposed to the option to lease option?
Okay.
You know, when you were talking about
Yeah,
the
yeah.
ways of doing it,
There's the two ways of doing it. Why do I prefer one or the other?
Yeah, why do you prefer that one?
You know, it's weird. From one week I'll like this way of doing it, and the other week I'll like the other way of doing it. The advantage to the option to lease option, the main way I teach it in my course, is that it's easy to put that on your website and have the seller fill it out and sign it, and that gives you an option on the property. Okay? They just write down what they want, and they sign it, and you now have that property under an option agreement, and you can start marketing it. Okay? The other way is you have to work a little bit more with the seller. You need to say, okay, what do you want? All right, you want 150? I'm going to write it this contract, and I'm going to write it for 160. And this is how I make my money. So you have to explain a little more detail. And instead of giving the seller just a one-page option contract at the very beginning to sign, you're going to give them a 4- or 5-page contract to sign. So, the one with the more paperwork is actually easier to explain. Because I'm going to take this agreement with you, and then I'm going to assign it to the tenant buyer. When you're doing the option to lease option, you have to explain, I'm going to sign this with you, and then I'm going to sign the lease option agreement with the tenant buyer as me being the tenant, the landlord, and then I'm going to assign that to you. So that can maybe get a little confusing when you're trying to explain it that way. It's just, you can look at both ways I'm doing it. I will tell you, most investors who are flipping lease options around the country are doing it the second way, where they sign the lease option agreement with the seller, and then they just assign that to the tenant buyer. Most people are doing it that way. My option to lease option agreement is kind of unique, where it's easier. Another big reason is it's easier for my VAs. When they're doing my marketing and talking to sellers and getting these properties under contract, it's a lot easier for the VAs to do my option to lease option agreement. Does that make sense?
I have a sort of follow-up. It would seem to me that if I was unfamiliar with the market where that house is, and I don't know what sort of the comparables are at the time and so forth, it would seem harder to do the second option, to put a hard number on there and know that I'm in the right area.
The question is, if you're doing a deal out of the market or out of your area, and you're looking at comps, it's going to be hard for you to put those numbers together. Again, I know I'm saying don't worry about the value of the house. And, I don't entirely mean that, but in the sense I kind of do, because it's unlike the other types of real estate that you do. It doesn't matter as much. If you're trying to make an offer to buy a house and you're going to rehab it, you really need to know what the real value of that house is before you make an offer. But with this strategy of flipping lease options, I really just give the seller whatever they want. And then I look at comps. I just go to Realtor.com and Zillow and Trulia at these other markets. And I see what current active homes are within a half-mile radius. And if they're way out of bounds, or if it's unclear, I'll tell them, I'll say, look, how about we do a 2-year lease option? Your price is pretty high. They already know that. And I'll say, we're probably going to need to do like some kind of, have something written in there that says if the house doesn't appraise, the tenant buyer gets another 12 months. So I'll just add that in. If it's way out of whack, I'll say we need at least 5 years. If it's way underwater, I'll say we need 10 years. And we're going to set the option price to whatever the loan balance is in 10 years. So that's what you do if it's upside down.
Do you look that up before you ever call them back? I mean, how do you know what I mean? 'Cause
No.
you would just say, I mean, what if you ended up writing a, you know, a
Well, remember, that's a great thing about options. You can cancel them anytime. If you found you've made a big mistake, just cancel the option agreement. I'll go back to the seller and say, hey, we need to fix the numbers.
Yeah, yeah.
So again, I'll get them whatever number they want. And when you use the lease option, when you use the option to lease option, the main way, it doesn't matter. They just tell you what they want. And then what I do is I look at the numbers and I send them an email back saying, okay, this is how the numbers are going to work. We're going to advertise it for this. We're going to set this up as a 3-year lease option. And you're going to get this every month in rent. And my profit's going to be this. So I spell the numbers out. But it's not as big. Don't be as concerned about it. You don't have to be that as concerned about it. Just take a guess. 2 years, 3 years. Really, nobody knows what the market's going to be like in 2 or 3 years. It may go up, it may go down. Nobody knows. And even the lenders, they can't tell you what the lending requirements are going to be. They may be even tougher in 2 years than they are now. So that's why I never evict the tenant if the house doesn't appraise. They can extend it either by putting down an additional deposit or just extending it another 12 months without penalty. One more question.
So I'm sure you need to be more accurate on rentals.
I'm more concerned, exactly. I'm more concerned about the rental amount every month than I am about the value price of the home. So I just go, again, I go to Realtor.com or Zillow and you can look up rentals on there. Or I go to HotPads or Craigslist. And I look to see what similar homes are currently renting for. And also, I'll know within a couple weeks, based on how many calls I'm getting, whether this is out of line or not. And if I'm not getting any calls, I may call the seller back and say, you want $1,600 for this, but I'm not getting any calls. There's similar homes that are renting for $1,400. Do you want to lower your price, or how long can you wait? You know? That's the great thing about options again. I'm not making any mortgage payments. So I don't care. I mean, you remember, if you've had a lot of houses, and I remember being so completely stressed out. These 6 houses on the website were all mine. They were all vacant, and I'm making payments on vacant houses. And I'm taking the first scumbag that comes in and has enough money you can fog a mirror. I don't care about their criminal background. I was so desperate. I didn't care what they were or where they came from. If they had enough money, I'd take them in. Scumbag's a little strong, I'm sorry. But I would take these really bad guys that I would never accept normally, but I was so motivated and desperate to get somebody in there. And every time I did that, it burnt me really big time at the end. Okay? So when I started doing this, where I'm flipping these as lease options, and I don't care that they're vacant or not, I mean, it was such a burden that was lifted from me, and I just felt so much better. So that's why I love wholesaling lease options instead of buying properties right now. One more.
Would you say that the majority of your deals then, the tenant buyer is covering the mortgage so that they're not sucking up $200-300 a month?
Yeah. Now, most of my deals, the tenant buyer's rent does cover the mortgage. What if it doesn't? Well, that may be a deal you can't do anything with. But I tell you, in markets like California, a lot of sellers out there are just used to paying. They're renting their house out already. They're already used to paying $500 extra a month to go towards a mortgage payment. And if they can show me that, yeah, they've been renting this house out for 2 years to these tenants and they've been paying $500 a month, I may go ahead and do a lease option with that. And but what I would do is make sure that the tenant buyer has an authorization to release information. So every month they can go in to make sure that mortgage payment's being paid. Okay? So I may feel comfortable with the seller continuing to do that. But as I want to make sure the tenant buyer knows, and they have a way to make sure that the mortgage is current. You can also use this third-party escrow company to collect the rent from the tenant and from the seller and pay the mortgage themselves. Does that make sense? Okay. I used Vumber let me look at one thing here real quick. We got to hustle. Okay. I used Vumber, I talked about before. When I did the marketing here in Colorado Springs, I went and got a bunch of phone numbers, and I had 2 phone numbers that were 719 area codes. That is the local area code here, right? Okay. And you can see on the bottom I had 7 pages of voicemails, of 10 each. And this phone number, 8850, was for the I want to lease purchase your house message. Okay? I looked at a spreadsheet here. My VA went in and listened to all the voicemails and wrote down which ones were yes, maybe, no, blank voicemail. Okay? So I calculated it all up. I had 79 yeses or maybes. And so I tried playing some of these voicemails, but they're hard to hear. So you can just go right in here to Vumber and listen to these voicemails. And then what you do is you can start calling these people back. And these are the leads I'm going to give you guys. Now, the second number here, my wife just texted me, my son is a defense rock star. He's playing soccer right now. This second number is, hey, we want to buy your house. We're investors, and if you want to sell we saw your rental property on Craigslist. If you're interested in selling your house, call us, and maybe we can make an offer on it. And so I had 23 people call me back from that campaign, and I forget the numbers. 23 of 147, right, equals. So 15% of the sellers I contacted in Craigslist asking if they wanted to sell their house responded back with yes or maybe. That's pretty good. Now, I don't know how many of those would be open to selling their house at a discount, but this is all of this marketing I did in about 30 minutes from Starbucks, 500 miles away from my home, or 900 miles. All right. Now what does
the first note mean?
The date.
15, no, I'm sorry, on the right under notes.
They had a phone. They have a cell phone number, mobile. So what I would do what I do is I'd have my VA call all these back and maybe get some more information. But what you would do, since you don't have a VA that could do that for you yet, is just call these people back. Let's call this first one. Now what I'm going to do is this phone number, 8332, I'm going to go into Craigslist and see if I can find the ad for 8332. I'm just going to type in 8332 from the phone number, and there it is. Beautiful 2-story townhome. $675, that's not right. Okay, this guy maybe, this is not a property I'd want to do a lease option on. I'm surprised it's got, maybe, this isn't, this first set of numbers up here is the houses that we're wanting to do a lease purchase. So maybe my VA got that wrong. So I'm going to look at this one, 9930. 9930. It's not there anymore. 3149. Fantastic. Woodmore. Where's that? Looks like a nice house. Oh, they didn't. They just as a blank voicemail. Let's go 6019. $9,755. Spectacular views and desired D20 school district. Looks like a nice house. This is somebody who called back and said yes, they would do a lease purchase. And the 408, is that an out-of-town area code? All right, so here's this Craigslist ad. $2,100, Northgate Highlands, conveniently situated across the Air Force Academy. Large, unfinished, the screen is kind of big. One of only 3 walkout basements in the community. Lease terms are negotiable. What does that tell you? Maybe motivated. Available to move in beginning of October. Here's a Google map. Prickly Pear Place.
Hey Joe, on the ones that say lease to own available, do you find that they typically go for your program or no because they're already sophisticated?
The question was on the ads that where they say lease option available or rent to own available, they typically don't work out because they already know how to do it themselves and they don't want to share the option deposit with me. But still, sometimes I'll call them. And maybe, you know, they're desperate enough, they're motivated enough, they will let me do it and keep the option deposit. Or I'll call them and ask them, hey, how's it going? Have you been getting any interest? I got a bunch of buyers looking for homes in your neighborhood. Do you want them or not?
So then you might just get a finder's fee for finding a tenant buyer?
Yeah, but I want to make at least,
First month's rent.
no, I want to make at least $5,000. So this looks like a nice area. Cul-de-sac, let's call this guy. It might already be rented. Where was I? Right here? Jason. I'll move a little closer here. Let me write a few things down because I don't want to take my computer with me. This is Northgate Highlands. I'm going in the middle of the room so you guys can hear better. Oh. 408. Remember, everybody needs to be quiet. Hey Jason, my name is Joe McCall, and I saw your house on Craigslist. And in fact, I'm returning your phone call from the other day. I'd left you a message to see if it was available for lease purchase.
Oh, lease purchase? No, we're not doing a lease purchase. We're only doing a lease
Okay.
at this time. Yeah.
You don't.
No, thanks for asking. Yeah.
You don't have any interest in selling it down the road?
Not at this time. No, we don't. I've discussed it with my wife, and yeah, at this time, yeah, we want to hold on to the house.
Okay, very good. Have a good day. Thanks.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye. That's interesting. Now, I thought about maybe digging in a little. Maybe I should have digging in a little deeper. Sometimes they'll say they don't want to sell it because they can't. They're way underwater. So maybe I should have gone into more of that. But it sounded to me like he's already thought about it. He just wants to rent it out. So maybe I could have pressed that because I could have explained to him, well, you want to rent it to a tenant or to somebody who wants to buy it down the road. I mean, looking back, I should have said that. So, should I call him back?
Yes.
No, that'll.
That's a little too.
He said days, I talked to the wife.
That's, you know, that's what it was.
My wife said no.
My wife said no.
Yeah. She said I'm not allowed to do that.
I tell you, what are some things I could have said on that
Is your
delete?
wife home? Can I go?
I looking back, I should have said, well, you know what? I'm an investor. So I just wanted to spell out I'm an investor and I specialize in lease purchasing. Have you thought about, let me just ask you, why don't you want to sell the house?
Right.
Well, you know, we owe too much for it. Well, if you don't mind me asking, how much? How much, you know? And just get them to open up. And I probably could have explained to him, well, okay, it's upside down, but you can lease it for 5 years to somebody who wants to buy it. I'm going to leave that lead in the spreadsheet for you guys when I send it to you. So if one of you call him, you can explain that and say, you know, maybe by the time you call him, that'll be the third person. Fine, okay, I'll think about a lease option. Stop leaving me alone.
Why do you people keep calling me?
Do you know Joe?
Because this is these terms are.
That was Scott.
Oh, that's right, I was Scott.
That's right.
Boom.
Obviously, he didn't notice that.
Yeah, I mean, 6673. Yeah, I should call him back as Scott.
Yeah, he might be a little suspicious for the same phone number.
All right, this is American Dream Properties. Yeah, he's probably an investor. But he replied with a yes.
Property manager, maybe.
All right, let's call this guy anyway because it'll show you.
A Denver number.
Is it Denver? Let's look to see what let's just Google American Dream Properties. Creedmoor. I saw somebody here, Colorado area agents. We're service 303, that's the number, isn't it? Rent to own homes. We need more inventory.
You've got 70 houses to talk to.
So you could call them up and say,
I got more inventory.
well, you know, they're realtors probably. So if you are an agent, that'd be a perfect one to call. So maybe you can partner with them. And it's almost impossible if you're an investor to partner with a realtor and bringing them a tenant buyer because they can't pay commissions to a non-agent. Okay. Let's just pick one out of here. 7566. All right, this number's not in here, but I'm just going to call them anyway. I don't know what this house looks like.
I think you take that
Oh, yeah. Calhoun, Colorado? Gordon Real Estate Group.
45 miles from here.
Joe, where are you searching in houses for rent?
Yeah.
You know, the last couple we've done, I've done a search in all housing and I'm pulling up multiples. So the last couple, they are likely investors.
Oh, yeah, if they have multiple homes on there. Now, you can still do deals with other investors. They're just a little harder to do. I've talked to some investors, though, and done deals. They don't care how much money I make. They're just so busy, and they want to fill their houses. Let's call this one anyway. Gordon Real Estate Group. They are where is this out? This is in Callahan, Colorado. Is it east of here?
Yes. Yeah, it's on the plan.
It's home of the county fair.
Is it a nice little town? All right, fine, we'll call them. I'm not going to tell them I have a bunch of buyers looking for home in those areas.
I have a few buyers.
So, Kelly. Does it say long-term?
Yeah.
Where?
Long-term lease preferred for at least 12 months, 2,000.
Oh, yeah, bottom line.
Okay, they're wanting a $2,000 damage deposit. Okay, so I might have a hard time convincing them that I want to keep the option deposit if they want to have at least a $2,000 option, right? But we'll see how it goes. Normally this is a house I skip just because I have so many other leads to call, but maybe it'd be helpful to
Hi, you have reached Kelly Kachera with Gordon Insurance Agency and Gordon Real Estate Group. I cannot take your call right now.
let's do this. Let's role play. Okay. Let's role play. In my course, by the way, I have a bunch of live calls that I do with sellers. One time I went through, I had some coaching students on the line. I just went through Craigslist and I just one right after the other until I got a deal. And it took me about 30 minutes. And I got it recorded, so I was pretty happy about that. Sometimes it's like, you know, I talk to 20, 30 sellers before I get a deal into contract. You get a lot of rejection, okay, but that's fine. Let's do a role play where, do we have any volunteers who want to be the seller and I'll be the investor? So who wants to be the seller? Give me a volunteer. What's your name? Desra. Can we put this mic?
I don't know how good I am. I'm very good at improv.
So I'm gonna ring you and then you say hello.
Okay, I can do that.
Ring, ring, ring.
Hello?
Hi, my name is Joe, and I saw your house on Craigslist. Is it still available?
Yes, it is.
Good, good. Listen, tell me a little bit about the house.
It's a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, 3-story house.
Okay. And I see you have it advertised here for $1,500 a month in
Yes.
rent. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Let me ask you something. Would you be open to leasing it for a few years and then selling it down the road?
I'm not sure. I was thinking about renting it out for about
Renting
a
it?
year.
Okay. And then what?
I don't know. Maybe try to sell it if I could.
Yeah. Do you live in the house now or is it vacant?
It's vacant right now.
Okay. So if you don't mind me asking, how long has it been vacant?
About a month.
Okay. So you've been trying to advertise it for rent, and are you getting much interest in it at all?
Not right now. I'm thinking about hiring a property management
Okay.
company.
Okay. Well, let me tell you real quick. I'm an investor and I buy and lease properties. Okay. And one of the things we specialize in is lease purchasing. And one of the advantages of lease purchasing is you can rent your house for a period of time to somebody who wants to buy it. That wouldn't be of any interest to you at all, would it?
Maybe.
Maybe. Okay. What are some of the questions you might have about how that works?
Who screens the renters, and what about? Well, I just don't want anybody coming to my house and wrecking it.
Yeah,
Pretty much.
that's understandable. Sure. Well, one of the advantages, again, of lease purchasing is you're renting it to somebody who wants to buy it, so they're going to take better care of the home. But if we could get somebody into your house that we pre-screen, you approve, who can be responsible for all the maintenance and repairs of the house, and you can sell it to them 1 or 2 years down the road and not have to pay any realtor commissions, what would you want to do then?
Would they cover my mortgage payments?
It depends. I don't know. What is your mortgage payment?
1,600.
1,600? And do you think a house in that neighborhood could rent for 1,600?
Oh, definitely.
Okay, sure. Yeah, they can probably get somebody that can cover your mortgage payment.
Okay, do I have to pay you anything?
We get paid from the buyer, so the answer is no. And we only get paid if we find somebody for your house. And we make our fee from the buyer. So it's pretty simple, straightforward, and you can cancel the agreement anytime. Is there any reason why we couldn't do business today? If I sent you a contract and start marketing your house tonight?
When you say cancel the agreement, am I responsible for anything if we cancel the agreement? Any payment?
Well,
do we
no,
have
what
to
I mean
pay
by
you?
canceling is if you sell it, or I'm sorry, I should say, if you rent it out or sell it before I do, you can just cancel my agreement.
And I don't have to pay you anything?
Yeah, you don't pay me anything.
Oh, okay.
So we got a bunch of buyers right now looking for homes in your area, and this may not be for you, that's fine, you can just say no. But they're looking for homes, and they're wanting to buy houses, they just can't right now, they need 6, 12 months, maybe 24 months. And I can start marketing your house tonight, as long as you give me the go-ahead.
How long do you think it'll take for you to get a
Usually we get somebody in 2 to 4 weeks. If we can't, then something's wrong, maybe it's overpriced, or there's something wrong with the house or the neighborhood. Now, I've not seen your house yet, but I know that area, it's pretty nice. I don't see why we couldn't get somebody there in 2 to 4 weeks. I just can't promise anything. But here's the thing, you can continue advertising it on your own.
Okay.
How about this? How about I send you some information? Give me your email address, I'll send you some information. And let's talk again later today, like 3 o'clock, would that work for you?
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right. One of the things that I noticed that I did during that conversation is I was maybe selling a little too much instead of just asking questions, but you sounded like you were ready to go. So one of the things though, when you're talking, this is really important, when you're talking to sellers, give them a deadline to get back to you. And don't ever email them anything unless they give you a commitment to get it back to you or to talk to you again later that day or tomorrow morning. It's really important. You'll get frustrated. Sometimes sellers will just say, yeah, go ahead and send it to me just so they can get you off the phone. Some people feel very uncomfortable saying no. So they'll just say, yeah, send it to me just so they can get you off the phone. So I would send it to them with a commitment of when I'm going to hear back from them, right? If they say, well, I need to talk to my spouse, I try to schedule a time to get the spouse on the phone. So if they want me to come and look at the house, sometimes I'll get that. Why don't you just come by and look at it? Then I'll say, look, I'd love to, but I'm just so busy right now. I got a bunch of sellers and buyers that I'm working with. I honestly don't have the time. But I don't really know why I would need to come and see your house. I can answer your questions right here on the phone. I got a bunch of buyers looking for homes in that area. So you can send me pictures or give me some more information. Let me ask you a few more questions. Why do you think you haven't sold it yet? Or why haven't you leased it out yet? One of the things I could have done is gone into asking you more questions about how many calls you've been getting on the house. Have you been getting good candidates? Do you have a way to pre-screen them and do background checks? Do you have a good mortgage broker, credit repair company that you can put them into? Okay. Good. Let's do one more, and maybe I'll call another seller. Let's do a seller that is trying to sell their house. So it's not on for rent. It's a FSBO. Who wants to be next? One volunteer. Over here. Sometimes it's good if you have a business partner or a friend to just practice like this and role play. All right, so you're a seller who has a house just listed for sale, okay? And you've responded, well, how about I'm just cold calling you?
Okay.
I'm just cold. So you've not responded to any marketing that you're smiling because you're going to trick me with something. She's going to trip me up. I should see it. So. All right, so ring, ring.
Hello?
Hey, my name is Joe. I saw your house on Craigslist. Is it still available?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Listen, I'm an investor and I buy and lease properties. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions about your house?
Sure, but most of the info should already be on the Craigslist.
See? Well, good. Let me ask you something. How long have you had this house listed for sale?
About 3 months.
It looks like a really nice house.
Thank
Have
you.
you been getting a lot of offers on it?
I've gotten a few.
Good. And have you turned them down or said no?
Yeah, for the most part, they're not getting me what I need to get out of the property.
Okay. It looks like a really nice house. I mean, why do you even want to sell it? It's a great neighborhood.
I'm moving on to another career opportunity, so I want to make sure
Oh.
that I get that taken care of,
Good
so
for
I don't
you.
have to manage
Great.
it out of town.
Great. Well, I mean, if you don't mind me asking, what are you doing? Where do you work?
I'm working in PR.
I'm building a little rapport. You're working in PR. Good. And so you're moving out of state?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. So do you plan on selling this house before you move?
That's the plan.
What if you don't?
I'll probably see if I can list it with a realtor and see if they can try to sell it while I'm gone.
Okay.
Or something like that.
Well, let me ask you something. What if your realtor can't sell the home? I mean, I'm sure you got like 6 months of reserves at least to pay a mortgage payment on a vacant house, right?
Mm-hmm.
You do? Okay, great. They never say that. She doesn't. Okay.
Some people just say yes, though.
You're right. Sometimes they'll say yes, or maybe they'll lie and say yes. All right, listen, like I already said, I'm an investor, and I buy and lease properties. Would you be open to maybe leasing your property to me or to one of my buyers for a year or two and then selling it at the end of that time and not have to pay any commissions?
Yeah, possibly. What's in it for you then?
Well, I get paid from the buyer if and when we find one. So we're investors. We're not going to give you a listing agreement, or we're not realtors. And our option agreement that we give you is flexible, so you can cancel at any time. It may not be a good fit for you, and that's just okay, but we got a lot of buyers right now looking for homes in your area. And if you'd be open to leasing your property for a few years, we can get somebody in there that wants to buy the house. It's just an option. It may not be for you, but you need to ask yourself, if I don't sell this house, what am I going to do? And you probably would not want to rent it to a tenant, would you? And have you thought about being a landlord? Do you know what's involved with all of that?
Yeah, that's why I was thinking of trying to get it sold before I leave town. But what's the difference between letting you lease my house and a property management company? Do I have to pay you every month, or?
Well, good question. But no, you don't pay us. We get paid from the buyer up front. And with a lease purchase, you actually collect 100% of the rent every month. And the other big difference is if you were to do it with a property manager, if and when you sold that house down the road, they would want probably a commission for you to sell that house, which may be fine. It's just an option for you. In fact, the way we set it up, if you want to do a lease purchase with us, you can still find a property management company and advertise it with them, and we'll just see who finds the first tenant and see how it goes from there. But listen, if I could get you some paperwork, and if I could start advertising your house tonight to our list of buyers, what would you want to do then?
Well, I'd have to look at what I would be on the line for. Like, how would you, what skin in the game do you have, representing my house? And how can I be assured, since you said that you're not a realtor, that I'm not going to be, handing the keys over or handing over information that I don't want to?
Well, I can't assure anything, first of all. And I can't assure that we're going to get you a tenant buyer that will actually buy the house. They may not. But what we can do is make sure that you approve of anybody that we find for this house. So all we're going to do is start advertising the home tonight. We'll send it out to our buyers. And if we find somebody that's a good fit, we'll send them your way. You'll get to meet them. We'll do the background check. And if you like them, then we'll just assign our contract to them.
So you do a background check. What else do you do?
We work with mortgage brokers who will review their application and tell us whether they think they have a good shot in 1 or 2 years to get a mortgage and buy your house.
So you're not going to be putting any criminals. You're going to be making sure that, that they're not lazy with their finances, I guess, is what my concern would be, is that if they can't afford a mortgage now, what is it? How do I have faith that they can afford one in a year or two?
Good question. We're not going to put anybody in the house that we don't feel can afford your house. So let me ask you this. Do you own a mortgage on the house, or is it free and clear?
I own a mortgage, but it's almost gone.
Okay, so what would you need every month to rent this house for?
$1,200.
Okay, now, by the way, she just told me she has a lot of equity